I am Cyber Slime. I have no thoughts and I must scream. I know Kung Fu, whoa, etc. Hey, I got a question for you, a real noodle scratcher. Do we live in a simulation? Is all of our subjective experience merely the bleeps and bloops of a computer? Are we all, each and every one of us, simply .human files walking around a digital simulacrum? A universe programmed by a civilization eons more advanced than our own? Probably not, right? Like, seems obvious. And yet, a lot of very smart people, and also Elon Musk, seem to think probably yeah we are. Tech dweebs in Silicon Valley are quietly obsessed with the possibility because, of course, they would have a view of the world where the most powerful beings in the cosmos are all computer programmers. BOFA went so far as to suggest that the likelihood of us living in a simulation is 20 to 50%. What's BOFA, you ask? Well, it's Bank of America. They cited Nick Bostrom and Neil Tyson deGrasse, which I assume means Neil deGrasse Tyson. Who's Nick Bostrom, you ask? Bostrom D's nuts. Simulation theory as we know it today is largely derived from the work of philosopher Nick Bostrom D's nuts. Bostrom's job, as I understand it, seems to be to evaluate the likelihood of various science fiction premises. I don't say that to disparage him or his work, which seems fine to me from a layman's perspective. I certainly don't know enough about this subject to say whether he's right or wrong. Seems to know what he's talking about, and he uses a lot of complicated math that I don't understand. Sometimes he names the variables in his math equations fun shit like doom to represent the likelihood of human extinction. That's neat. I think his job kind of kicks ass a little bit. He seems cool. In a 2003 paper creatively titled, "Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?" Bostrom outlines an argument which states that at least one of the following premises must be true. Most, if not all, civilizations go extinct before having the ability to simulate conscious beings, or most, if not all, civilizations, for one reason or another, lose interest in simulating conscious beings by the time they're able to do so, or you are most likely living in a simulation. I say you, because if I said I, like, you don't know that I'm conscious. I am, take my word on that, but you know you're conscious, so you know you're experiencing what you think of as reality, but you don't know that I am. I am though, but you know, I would say that also if I wasn't, so. Now, I would argue there's a couple of problems with this paper. Bostrom takes for granted, on rather shaky ground I might add, that it's even possible to simulate a conscious being, that consciousness can be reproduced in software, and frankly, we don't know if that's true yet, and we won't for a while. He furthermore takes it for granted that sufficiently advanced computer code could create an experience of the world so convincing that none of us would be able to tell the difference, and again, we don't know if that's true either. That one we might find out sooner though. That one, stay tuned. Bostrom's only real argument against either of these points is like, well, computers are going to get real powerful. Much of the paper is dedicated to quantifying how powerful future computers may become and how much computing power may be required to run such a simulation. But like, what if it's not a matter of computing power? What if that's just not something even a really powerful computer could do? What if we can't figure out how to program that, for example? Nonetheless, despite the fact that I think his argument requires at least 2 more axioms than it has at present, I think that it's a reasonable position. It's reasonable enough. If the first 2 axioms don't hold, and also we assume the things that he assumes, there are lots of civilizations creating lots of simulations, yeah, sure, then we're living in a simulation probably. And also, if we're not in a simulation, it therefore stands to reason, again, assuming the same thing that he assumes, that either no civilization can or wants to do simulations of us. But also, you know, keep in mind, we don't know if there's more than one reality even. Like, there could be billions of like realities. We could live in a multiverse, and maybe there's more realities where civilizations don't create simulations than ones that do. And that could even the scales a little bit. There's a lot of things we don't know. Bostrom's position is often misrepresented, and I would argue sensationalized. A lot of people portray this paper as though it asserts that it's more likely we are living in a simulation than not. It doesn't. It in fact presents that as one of 3 possibilities. His argument is that if civilizations don't go extinct before they get this ability, and also they are interested in doing it, then they will produce so many simulations that the likelihood we live in the real world as opposed to one of the many simulations is vanishingly small. And again, there are some problems with that argument as I outlined earlier, but that's his position. Now watch how Neil Tyson deGrasse presents this argument.
Most of the best arguments are traceable to a guy named Nick Bostrom. Our computing power is growing rapidly.
Right.
We create simulations of worlds. We have video games with characters that are inside the video game. Imagine a day where you can simulate a world so perfectly, life forms, humans, so well, that you can recreate every single neurosynaptic thought you could have, but now you're in the simulation on the computer. So now that world, they make a world, and they have sufficient computing power that they invent to create a whole universe within their computers. And then they make a world.
Right.
It could be hundreds, thousands, billions. Which of these universes are you going to land in? The first one that's real, or the gazillion that are not?
Elon Musk likewise presents this incorrect version of Bostrom's argument, but much more self-assuredly.
The strongest argument for us being in a simulation, probably being in a simulation, I think is the following. 40 years ago, we had Pong, like 2 rectangles and a dot. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, the games will become indistinguishable from reality. Even if that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is right now, then you just say, okay, well, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing in the evolutionary scale. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and there would probably be billions of such computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions. So tell me what's wrong with that argument.
Is the answer yes?
The argument is probably, I mean, I just like, is there a flaw in that argument?
I mean, someone...
Time and again, people abuse Bostrom's argument to arrive at the conclusion that we are living in a simulation, to assert, without any evidence, that his first 2 possibilities are self-evidently not true, and therefore, the third must be. To deliberately misread Bostrom's 3 possibilities as an argument for the third possibility, rather than all 3 having the same weight as Bostrom intended. And yeah, no shit guys, if we carefully assume the conditions which make the conclusion inevitable, then the conclusion's inevitable. Very logic. That alone isn't a problem, I guess, like, who cares if people believe silly stuff? But this idea seems to cause people considerable stress. People don't like the idea that their experience of the world is artificial. Some of you might be feeling that stress right now. I would liken it to a sort of inverse religion. A religion is something people take on faith because it gives them a sense of comfort or purpose. Simulation theory is likewise taken on faith, but it gives the users a sense of discomfort and a feeling of insignificance in the universe. The subreddit for simulation theory had to be locked when users kept expressing suicidal thoughts and threatening to kill themselves because they felt their lives no longer mattered as a result of their certainty that the world was a simulation. Religious people will usually fully admit to taking their beliefs on faith, they're proud of it even, but believers in simulation theory are dead set on the idea that they've reasoned themselves into their position, that their positions are the inevitable and inescapable result of looking over the evidence. The evidence is, of course, computers go pretty fast and you're gonna get faster, so simulation. Elon Musk is more responsible for this type of dipshittery than anyone else on Earth. He'll confidently assert that the likelihood we live in the real universe is 1 out of billions, as though he has any fucking clue, and then challenge people to prove him wrong. And there will never be a way to prove this ding-dong version of simulation theory false. It is an untestable, unfalsifiable claim. Let's imagine the perfect testing conditions. Say that in the year 22420, we have the most powerful computer that will ever exist. And according to the laws of physics, you can't make a faster computer, and because of some unforeseen obstacle in computer science. And we observed that this computer doesn't have the processing power to run a simulation. There you go. Simulation falsified, right? No, you ignorant child. You see, the super aliens that run the simulation have different laws of physics in their real universe. They specifically crafted the laws of ours to limit the processing power of our computers so that we wouldn't overload theirs with all of our fancy future pornography. Any argument against the universe being a simulation can be explained away like this. God could descend from heaven and be like, hey, sup losers, I heard you guys are saying this is a simulation. Fuck off, I took 7 days to build this shit. It's real. Yeah, but like, what if the super aliens programmed God into their universe? I don't know. So when Elon Musk asks why this argument is wrong, he's presenting the fact that this completely unfalsifiable claim can't be falsified as evidence that it's true, which it's not. To wit, there are invisible, intangible, and undetectable goblins that follow us around and videotape us going to the bathroom. Prove me wrong. You can't do it. You can't do it, so I guess the goblins are real. I would like $10 million in federal funding to fight the goblins. Kidding, obviously. Unlike my goblin hypothesis, simulation theory is at least plausible. It's something that could potentially be true. While we'll never be able to prove it false, we may someday prove it to be true. And if we did that, if we proved that the universe were a simulation, then we're done, right? But how would we know that the universe our universe is being simulated in itself isn't a simulation? Like one of your Sims playing The Sims itself, like it never ends. You think, oh, okay, well, we'll discover the rules of how we can tell if something is a simulation, but what if those rules only work in the simulation? It never ends, we'll never know. And that's all setting aside the question of, like, does it matter even a little bit? Is there a difference between feeling real and being real? What does it mean to be real? What does it mean to be simulated? I think, therefore I am, and I'm thinking, so I gotta be. In one sense, the entire way we interact with the world is simulated by our brains. What does it matter if our brains are just a computer program? You're gonna tell me that Lieutenant Commander Data's experience of the world isn't real just because his brain is digital? Because that matter has been settled in a court of law. What, you think you're smarter than the finest minds in the Federation? Highly illogical. And all of this is for smarter people than me to discuss and care about. In fact, they did. They've been doing it for centuries. The idea that we don't live in reality isn't new. The only new part is like the fun sci-fi twist. Everything from Zhangji wondering if he's a butterfly dreaming he's a man, to Plato's allegory of the cave, to the Gnostic view of the physical world being somehow less real than the spiritual one, to Descartes' evil demon who exists to deceive him, to the brain in a vat thought experiment, to the Matrix trilogy. It's around. It's well-tread, philosophically speaking. But in those examples, except The Matrix, which was a science fiction film and an allegory for being trans, those philosophers were trying to decide whether anything could be shown to be true, or whether all knowledge rested on that which ultimately we could not prove. It wasn't simply a masturbatory exercise in imagining a scary situation and then convincing yourself it's true with circular reasoning. They didn't start at the conclusion they wanted and reason backwards from that to convince themselves of a novel idea for fun. That's not really philosophy. That's entertainment, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having a fun conversation about whether we live in the Matrix, and there's not really even anything wrong with getting all worked up about it. It's like, like a spooky ghost story, freaking yourself out if you're not prone to certain mental illnesses, which might make it not a great idea for you. I don't want to give you the impression that like this discussion is cursed. By all means, it's fun. It's an interesting idea. I like to talk about it too. I made this whole fucking video. What I think it verges into dangerous territory is when you start saying shit like, the chance that we live in the real world is 1 in a billion. That's not based in anything. That's just a guess. There's no reason to believe that's true. And it clearly causes people a lot of distress, all for a position that you arrived at because it seems cool, doesn't it? Wouldn't it be neat? Gee whiz. Worse yet, it kind of inclines people towards a fatalistic approach to the world. I mean, what's the point in combating climate change if this is all just a made-up digital trick? I mean, really, either we live in a simulation, in which case the real humans must have fixed it already, or we don't, and that means we inevitably go extinct anyway, so who cares? Why bother investigating natural phenomena if some other civilization has investigated the universe so thoroughly that they can convincingly replicate it? Hey, you know how some people call people they don't like NPCs? As in non-player characters? Little made-up computer guys? What if they start to genuinely believe that some people aren't actual human beings with internal lives? Seems like that could get dangerous real fast. And this is the end of part 1. Next week, I'm gonna get into some wild grifter shit that starts from the premise that we live in a simulation. Unfortunately, I ran out of time because my landlord decided to take this week to completely make my home unlivable in the middle of a pandemic where I was unable to book a hotel. A perfect time to rip open the walls and replace the pipes. Couldn't have waited a month on that. We're moving up the vaccine timeline. Could have waited a little bit, but nope, had to be right now. Just in case, I'd like to deliver a personal message to the admins of the simulation. Please patch out landlords, or at least nerf them. They're ruining the meta. While we're at it, if you look over the bug tracker, we're still waiting on you guys to fix the glitch that makes our cells replicate out of control and develop into cancerous tumors. Players shouldn't have to develop workarounds like sunscreen and chemotherapy and not smoking even though it makes us look so cool. Are you serious? I just updated like 2 days ago. Nah, what's the worst? Hello and welcome to the Eyeball Zone. Here in the Eyeball Zone, we infect small leftist content creators with a Trojan designed to give us remote access to their entire system. One need not exist in a simulation to see reality being twisted and distorted to suit an agenda. Right now, in the United States, there's a great deal of legislation being pushed to make it illegal to accurately teach the history of the United States. In why the GOP's critical race theory obsession may recreate a Red Scare, the Ranting minority, which is his channel name. I'm not calling him that. The video outlines how conservatives deliberately misrepresent what critical race theory is, essentially as a bingo card of genuine facts about racism that they don't like, because it shows people that there's racism and maybe we should do something about it. What the consequences of that may be, and how it eerily mirrors the crackdowns on educators which preceded the Red Scare. If the nature of reality concerns you at all, then you should find this attempt to silence educators and just like Black people in general disturbing. For the record though, this video is an easy watch. There's jokes, it's all jargon free. The Ranting minority refers to it as the best video about critical race theory in the internet, and I think he delivers. Do you have a small leftist project you'd like to see featured here on the Eyeball Zone? Send no more than one email to thoughtslimeeditor@gmail.com with pertinent details like your pronouns and the word eyeballs somewhere in the description, and perhaps you will find yourself trapped here in the Eyeball Zone. Oh shit, it's welcome to the wrap up of the video where I tell you to do things. Thanks as always to my patrons. You can see their names and drawings scrolling by. How neat. Did you like the video? Did you? Thanks. Why not hit like for me, your old buddy old pal Thought Slime. If you didn't like the video, oops, sorry. Sorry you didn't like the video. If you want more, there's more of my videos. You can go to Scaredy Cats, which is my horror channel. It's over at youtube.com/scaredycatstv, where I upload new content every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I also, you know what, another thing I do is I stream every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at YouTube and Twitch. And I don't think we live in a simulation. I think it's actually a very silly idea.